We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Hello, this is Dylan. Nima, you're not even damn sitting there. Hello, this is Dylan Moore and Nima Butcher of I Read a TV. Oh, we're talking about a fun subject today. It is Monday. It is Monday, isn't it? Yeah, it's Monday, February 27th, 2023. And we're going to be talking about some Bitcoin maximalism. I'm not even entirely sure what that is. And Nima does, and it's going to be exciting. And I'm waiting for his ass to get back to the damn seat. Nima, where are you? Do I need to do a goddamn tap dance to get over here? So, we've been working out a bunch of bugs in this system and this studio, and I'm proud to say I've got the studio so spiffed up and so clean and so organized and so labeled. Everything's labeled now. Do you guys have any idea how many motherfucking cables are in a studio like this? And how cables don't fucking agree with other cables. There's just been so much trial and error figuring out what cables. It's nice of you to grace us with your presence, Nima, after the opening.
You're very welcome. And for those who are wondering, Dylan is going to write a book one day about all the cables and equipment and tables and microphones.
Says Nima over there in Florida, not experiencing any of the pain I'm going through over here. But
that's why I want to read the book.
All right. So, Nima, you told me, but I don't even remember. What is Bitcoin maximalism? What are we talking about here?
Well, Bitcoin maximalism, from what I understand, is basically supporters of cryptocurrency and of blockchain who believe that Bitcoin is the only relevant cryptocurrency out there. Maybe there's milder versions of Bitcoin maximalism, because I sympathize with the Bitcoin maximalists, and I always have from day one. Maybe there's a softer form of Bitcoin maximalism which just says that Bitcoin is going to be the most important and most relevant cryptocurrency, and there may be others here and there that can be used by Bitcoin developers to test out new features. Maybe some that will end up doing things that it's just not Bitcoin's cup of tea, but that it's going to be a relevant cryptocurrency moving forward. There's no, in other words, that there's no such thing as Bitcoin becoming the MySpace of the next crypto Facebook or whatever kind of thing.
I think there's a lot. We've talked about this before, but there's a lot of reasons for this. But I think this is particularly relevant since we're still in the aftermath of the whole FTX thing, which was the thing that was supposed to finally kill crypto, right? I mean, there was this huge. I mean, it was up at 68,000 and went down to 14. I don't even know what it's at now. It's 25 or something like, right? But
you mean what's down to the FTX coin?
No, the Bitcoin price.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so, and I mean, this cracks me up every time we see it, because it hits this peak and then it comes crashing down. But that crash down is still way higher than the last peak. Right? Well, I guess not this most recent one. There was a 20, whatever. But I mean, again, when it crashes down, it goes to 68, it comes down to 14, and everyone's like, oh, it's the end of the world. It's still like, hey, it's still up a billion % from 5 years ago. Right.
We always see these geniuses come out, right? When it goes through another correction, like the 20th correction probably at this point, we have geniuses like this guy writing articles. Bitcoin has rallied. What are crypto's true believers still smoking?
Yeah, who's
FTX is here. And here's the talking point that they've all been handed, and that they all had to write articles around. FTX's filing for bankruptcy was an existential event. I read this all over the place, left and right, top to bottom, all over the corporate media. They were talking about FTX as an existential event for cryptocurrency. And is anyone in crypto still, even worried about FTX? No, of course not. There's media drama going on around it, etc. But the money seems to be there. Like, I don't know if we maybe we can do this some other show, but Sam Bankman-Fried wrote a Substack a little over a month ago, I think. Pretty much exactly the day.
We don't have to go over it, but summarize it.
Yeah, pretty much exactly the day crypto started bouncing back from its depths of around 16,000 at the time, I believe. He wrote a Substack, to the best of his recollection, trying to piece together what had happened during the Alameda and the FTX crash. And the bottom line, the very short version of the story is that the money seems to be there. The depositors' money seems to be there for the most part. It's just that bankruptcy was done, and now everything was put into receivership. Somebody else is in charge of the whole process, so it's going to take a little longer. But it doesn't look like these incredibly exaggerated scenarios that were laid out in the beginning. Oh my God, he stole the billions and he hid it in the Caribbean Ocean. So where are the FTX billions? Where did the bastard stash his FTX billions?
I had been listening to. I found a YouTube channel, a YouTube show. It was at the top of my recommendation, so it's probably corporate jammed down my throat, right? Of this guy going over, like, here's the extent of the fraud that this guy committed. Like, he creates his own coin and then artificially increases the price and uses that as collateral for loans on the own bank that he owned. I mean, that was the story that this guy was spinning. And then if you read the Substack article, like you were saying, I mean, he even points out, he said for the American investors, they could have been made whole since day one. All that money's still sitting there. Right?
Yeah. He said it's ridiculous. He said it's ridiculous that they haven't been given their money yet. And he talks a little bit. He provides some background. And I don't know if I got this all out of this article, but or maybe some other articles too. But Alameda was their first. Okay, Alameda was a very risky crypto hedge fund, if I understand that correctly. It takes people's money and puts it in risky cryptocurrencies. So Alameda was just, your average run-of-the-mill risky speculative hedge fund, I guess, if there's such a thing. And taking custodial deposits and investing them on behalf of customers. And Alameda, as many other funds around that time, started struggling with conducting complex financial transactions with cryptocurrencies. The kinds of hedging transactions that they're used to doing in the legacy systems. Shorts, longs, triple shorts, whatever kind of crazy stuff they do. Hedged transactions, etc. So they created, and so at that time, Sam Bankman-Fried and some other people running Alameda, they created FTX out of that necessity to run a kind of complex hedge fund on using cryptocurrencies. So they were using FTX for some of their deposits. They were, as it were, they were eating their own dog food, right? They had built a product and they were using that product themselves to a large extent. And so, because a big deal is made about this shadowy relationship between Alameda and FTX, and but that was always out in the open. It was Alameda was the fund, FTX was the product that the fund owners developed out of the necessity for certain tools and transactions that it didn't seem was easy to do at the time with cryptocurrencies. And then, year 2022, Alameda did not do very well, as did almost all other crypto projects, right? If we recall, year 2022 was a pretty bad year for all kinds of risk assets, not just crypto, but Nasdaq, etc., and even just mainstream stocks as well. So Alameda was heavily exposed to cryptocurrency, and throughout 2022. So I'm just pulling it up on my screen here. This was the end of 2021, and basically 2022 was just a year of losses. And so Alameda lost a lot of money and had entered into a big transaction on FTX that the FTX extended a margin loan on. I was just looking through his articles. So he writes here, over the course of 2022, a number of crypto platforms became insolvent due to margin positions blowing out. Voyager, Celsius, BlockFi, Genesis, Gemini, and ultimately FTX. So a lot of crypto traders, they entered positions for which they did not have liquidity at the time, aka they get a margin loan from the exchange, which is not uncommon, right? This is something that happens in the trading world. And he says here, because Alameda had a margin position open to FTX, the run on the bank turned that illiquidity into insolvency. So at the time when crypto assets, entered their final stage of capitulation, most likely you could argue, at the end of 2022, Alameda had this big margin loan from FTX. Then their assets got depreciated so severely that a run on the bank ensued. People couldn't get all their assets right at that moment, and Alameda could not pay back that margin loan to FTX. So basically, Alameda took FTX with them. FTX International, that is, not FTX US. And so for a brief moment, there wasn't enough liquidity, and so the company went into receivership. But from what it looks like, it wasn't like he stole a whole bunch of money and it's gone. It seems like the money is mostly there. People will probably get their assets back. People will have lost a lot of money, of course, because that's what happened. Yeah, this happened to all of crypto in 2022, right? So yeah, a lot of the money you put in is going to be gone. Not because you got defrauded, because the fund you invested in didn't do very well. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more.
No, I just wanted to bring that up because all the time, but every year or so we get this story that finally is going to do crypto in, and it just keeps coming back, and specifically Bitcoin. I mean, there's a lot of cryptos that get done in, which is Bitcoin Maximalism, what we're going to be talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to...
Bitcoin it's just got this momentum where it's like, okay, yeah, it went down. It's still a bazillion % up more than it was if you look at it compared to any other investment fucking ever. But it's still got the momentum, but it's still going.
Right. I mean, the level of... for people to think that something mundane like FTX is an existential... moment for all of crypto. I mean, your understanding of crypto has to be so low IQ, slow boy level. I can't even put myself in that position anymore, right? Because we've been in this business for so long now that I can't even grasp that level of slow boyness. But I guess it's some journalist who's been told to write something, so it's just his shitty job that he has to do. He has to write something, and it has to sound exciting and dramatic, so that's what they do.
Right. Like sharing your screen again. Ah! Now you're not sharing your screen. I gotta hit buttons whenever Nima shares or doesn't share screen.
Yeah,
Weird stuff.
Dylan is my dancing monkey. I'm basically.
Yeah. So, going back to the Bitcoin maximalism thing, one of the interesting things that you and I discussed, you had an article that was actually written by the founder of Ethereum, pointed out, is that Bitcoin appears to be pretty much the only coin that was created where the founder, who's this mythological figure, didn't take a big chunk of it and stick it in his own pocket, right?
Well, it's the only cryptocurrency ever with zero pre-mine.
Right. So, for example, even the founder of Ethereum, I think he kept 20% in his. When he created it, right?
And when I say only, maybe there's some small, like for example, Namecoin is the first altcoin. It was there pretty early on too, but out of all the relevant ones, Bitcoin is pretty much the only one with no pre-mine at all, which is significant. Yeah,
which is significant because I think this is very true. How many altcoins came out where the person creating it is like, I know this. Like, I'm not trying to revolutionize the world here. I'm just going to pre-mine it, hope it gets caught up in the frenzy, and I could sell the shit that I made that was worth nothing yesterday, right? So, I mean, seriously. And how do you gain trust for your coin, knowing that that's happening, if you're going to pre-mine it, right? And on top
by spending a bunch of money on an expensive PR campaign.
Yeah, right. And then on top of that, we went over this as
which comes out of the pre-mine, by the way. So that's where the money goes.
Right.
By the way, who's the guy who said thank you guys?
I don't know.
Your presentations on MMT has completely altered the way I think about economics, politics, and investing. Thank you so much. Well, that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
To thank Nima. I just repeat what he says loudly when it comes to that sort of thing.
When it comes to everything, actually, but yeah.
Fuck you. Well, to repeat something else that fucking Nima told me here, when we were looking over that article with the founder of Ethereum that he wrote, he pointed this out. Is he said Bitcoin, the Bitcoin maintenance people, the guys that are still really working on Bitcoin, they're the only crypto community that doesn't get shiny object syndrome. Right? every other altcoin is trying to like do your taxes and cook you breakfast, right? Like smart contracts, for example, on Ethereum, right? Like it does this thing, we can use it to do that thing, it uses the other thing. Whereas the Bitcoin people are saying no, it enters into the blockchain, it creates its stamp, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Am I summarizing this incorrectly, Nima?
No, I mean it's accurate that the Bitcoin project has remained much more reluctant to adding new bells and whistles because they're popular in the moment or because they sound appealing. So that has been Bitcoin's strength and its uniqueness, interestingly, right? You have Bitcoin in the beginning and all these other ones coming out trying to be more unique, more special, more interesting. And in that whole process, ironically, Bitcoin is the most unique one, remains the most unique one because it has zero pre-mine, which nobody can replicate. And it remains stubbornly simple and manageable, and with that, decentralized. Whereas all other projects have given up decentralization to some extent. I'm not knocking Ethereum, but Ethereum's block size has grown substantially when compared to Bitcoin. And at one point, you won't have a lot of hobby miners anymore who can maintain the project. Unless, obviously, hopefully they've already come up.
Right.
They figure something. Maybe they've already figured something out. Again, I'm not an expert on Ethereum, but these are issues that the Bitcoin developers have been more careful in being hesitant and in predicting what could happen. And also the block size. The block size debate, we've discussed it here before on our show, was, in my opinion, the first establishment assault on the Bitcoin network. I mean, it almost seemed like a CIA operation to me, like a... There was suddenly this schism was created in the Bitcoin community, probably sometime around 2014-ish, 2015 maybe, of, oh my God, if we don't expand the block size, because it's only 1 megabyte, right? The block can only have a size of 1 megabyte. If we don't expand that, then we won't be able to fulfill all the transactions in the network, and the system will just stop and blow up, and it'll all be done. But even then, people always pointed out, well, that can't really happen. If there's too many transactions, then the fees will just go up, and it'll become more expensive to send a transaction, and then fewer people will send transactions, and then that's it. Problem solved.
There's
an
equalizer built right into the system.
Exactly. Now the thing is, we do want to facilitate a lot of transactions, of course. So nobody's saying that, okay, we're satisfied with being able to run this low number of transactions for eternity, and throttling everyone out of the network and making it prohibitively expensive. And what have they done since then? They've come up with SegWit, they've come up with the Lightning Network, they've come up with solutions that are intelligent, that allow people to use, that facilitate more transactions per second without sacrificing decentralization, without inviting blockchain bloat, without adding too much complications into the system, with retaining the foresight of, we have to be careful of what we allow into this network. We have a comment real quick. Most of the top altcoins are taking the basic principles of Bitcoin and attempting to generalize them to more use cases beyond just money, e.g. decentralized finance. Yeah. And the problem with that sometimes is that people still don't even understand Bitcoin. I mean, we just looked at the article. It's a incredibly low-level, rudimentary understanding of even just the simplest cryptocurrency that people have, and it still doesn't have anywhere near the adoption it could have. So that should be front and center in the cryptoverse. I think this should be tackled, and not, several steps down the road, several decades down the road problems such as decentralized finance, etc. I mean, decentralized finance, maybe they'll probably, I'm exaggerating, decades down the road. But there's obvious issues with crypto adoption, with just very plain and simple basic crypto stuff, like sending a Bitcoin transaction that a lot of people still don't understand. That is the low-hanging fruit that should be tackled first. And a lot of those projects trying to tackle something in the future, they're not going to be around much. Even though maybe they have something.
The problem's going to be solved by the time they think that this problem's going to happen in the future, is what you're saying.
Well, or the time it's not the time right now to solve that problem, right? A lot of them are going to go out of business just because they were too early. That has happened many times in tech. For example, General Magic, those were the first guys who wanted to build something like the iPhone, but it was way too early, so it didn't really come to fruition. Although a lot of the ideas of that project survived and were picked up later on. But yeah, if anyone wants to look up the documentary about General Magic, I think it's available on YouTube for free. It's a pretty good documentary, I think. Anyway,
I think it's also worth pointing out that, again, this was your idea, the value of Bitcoin from the MMT perspective that obviously no one else has come up with, as far as I know.
Well, and also everyone else, most people you tell this to, they just don't really have a response to it. It's more like it's in total indifference. And
You're talking about the MMT value explanation, or
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then I'm bringing this back to the Bitcoin maximalism, right? So if you haven't watched our show where we explain the value of Bitcoin from the MMT perspective, it basically goes a little bit something like this, which is to say MMT recognizes that money is valued by the creator demanding it. In history, typically, this has been done by the creator of the money demanding taxes, right? Pay me or else. Here's the 9mm. If you don't give me the arbitrary token, I'll shoot you. Okay, now it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
The barter theory of moneyists have focused on crypto and trying to figure out how to say, okay, well, we understand that money is an advanced form of barter, and due to the money regression theorem, we've got to figure out how to get people using this more and more so it could eventually turn into a currency, right? And there's this idea of, okay, we could use it for this, we could use it for that. If enough people just started accepting it, at some point it's going to be a currency. And we go, no, wait a minute. The reason it's a currency, is because the creators demand the token, right? If you want to facilitate a Bitcoin transaction, the creators, who are the miners, require you to pay them in Bitcoin to facilitate that transaction. Similar to, in order to pay your taxes to the government that created the token, in the case of the United States government, the United States creates U.S. dollars, you have to pay your taxes in U.S. dollars. That, I mean, it's a current kind of in electrical speak, right? You've created a currency. That creates the demand, which thereby creates the value. And so, I mean, this is kind of this weird Austrian MMT hat that we're putting on at the same time, right? Which is to say, okay, here's the private currency, but it's not valued the way that you thought that it's going to be valued. It's not the barter theory of money giving this value. It's the fact that it's demanding its own token. Itself is its own token. We feel that that's where the value of crypto comes from. And Bitcoin is the one that's just singularly focused on marching that forward, where everything else wants a bunch of bells and whistles. So if anything, Bitcoin remains the closest thing to a private currency in the crypto sphere because it's staying close to this original mission, which Nima has identified, and like I said, I keep repeating, is the closest thing we have to a private currency because it's meeting that definition.
Well, and also, and this is another thing we've mentioned on this show, is that just because Bitcoin has been focused on making the base layer work and making the basic use case work, that doesn't mean that it can't be used for smart contracts, for decentralized finance, for blah, 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 all the things that will be possible down the road with crypto. Bitcoin can facilitate just as well. And by the way, we'll get to that in a little bit. We can talk about it. But this is now becoming a serious thing. There was just several articles written about how people are now beginning to use a Bitcoin protocol called ordinals, which is, I guess it's pretty new. But ordinals doesn't... Yeah, because actually I can't, for some reason the mouse arrow just gave up on me on this computer here. So I can't really...
You lost your dancing monkey.
Exactly. So it would be great if you could share stuff when we talk about it as a background. But yeah, so that's become a thing now. Bitcoin is being used more and more for NFTs, for smart contracts, and smart contracts have been a thing in Bitcoin from the beginning, actually. I mean, a Bitcoin transaction is a smart contract, okay? So it's not like, oh my God.
It creates a permanent ledger, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it uses smart contract operands in the code. So it's just the most simplistic, basic smart contract. It's like send this money right away from here to there. And then multi-sig, obviously, which is a multi-signature transaction, is a smart contract. So yeah, smart contracts have been a thing. The question is, what about more complex smart contract? Well, if you can make the simple ones, why can't you make the more complex ones? It's just that, like I've said, Bitcoin Bitcoin has not always wanted to solve it all on the Bitcoin chain. You can build around and on top of it and achieve solutions without having to solve it all on chain with that particular cryptocurrency. But nonetheless, it is now. Some people have actually attributed the recent spike in the Bitcoin price, when it went back to over 20,000, to its extensive usage for Bitcoin ordinals. Actually, since I keep talking about ordinals, maybe we can just pull up the screen about ordinals, maybe.
Yes.
Okay. There's one on Nasdaq.
I'm just hoping I did not test before we started my screen share, so I hope that things don't freak out. So you want me to pull up the price?
No, just a description of ordinals.
What are ordinals? Decrypt.co. Okay, I'm gonna press the button. Here we go. But actually, Nima, I'm coming back. It's going to have the same loss of audio to the stream.
Okay.
I fixed it on yours. I didn't fix it on mine. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll just pull it up here.
Yeah. I'll read it. Ordinals are the new thing taking Bitcoin by storm. On Monday, February 13th, inscriptions using ordinals passed 100,000 as users flooded the network with images, video games, and other content. Ordinal inscriptions, similar to MFTs, are digital assets inscribed on a Satoshi, the lowest denomination of a Bitcoin. Inscribing on Satoshis named after, is possible thanks to Taproot. So what is an ordinal subscription? Bitcoin developers have worked to bring non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, to the #1 blockchain for nearly a decade. Beginning in 2014 with Counterparty, the creators of Rare Pepe NFT collection, followed by Stacks in 2017. The inscription process writes or inscribes data of the content stored into the witness of Bitcoin transactions. So this isn't going on the blockchain. This is something going alongside blockchain, right?
No, it is going on the blockchain, at least a part of it, because it says it uses a Satoshi to record information. So Satoshi would be on the blockchain. I didn't actually. Where does it say that it's not on the blockchain? Where did you get?
No, I'm that's out of my brain, Nima.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand. Is this something developed by the Bitcoin team, or is this something?
This is an open source project. Is led by a former Bitcoin core developer, Casey Rodermore. It's essentially a protocol for assigning numbers to specific Satoshis that can allow them to be tracked and specifically transferred. Representing 100 millionth of a single Bitcoin, the Satoshi is the smallest unit of a Bitcoin that can be used in transactions.
So my question
for the time being, by the way,
right.
That may also change one day.
So my question is, Nima, is this something like if I go to the Bitcoin blockchain and I look at this Satoshi that's been inscribed, I could see that on the Bitcoin blockchain, or I need to go to this other inscriptions blockchain and they're just keeping track of the Satoshi that they've put something onto? You
can see it on the Bitcoin blockchain. One question is there some convention on how to read the data that's put in there, which I suspect is the case. And for that, you would use the ordinals client, right? So the ordinals client would have all the info on which are the Satoshis that are part of this whole thing. And the ordinals client would have some way of interpreting the data that's been written into that particular Satoshi transaction. I'm just guessing right now, honestly, right? I could be just making, but the data is recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain. I mean, this is from Nasdaq. By using the ordinals protocol, users can assign content to a Satoshi that they please. Users can assign content to Satoshi that they please. I'm guessing that he means any content to Satoshi. Essentially opening the door for NFTs to run directly on Bitcoin's blockchain. Blah, blah, blah.
So, I mean, how complicated of something can you stick in this blockchain? Like, if I got a photo that's 14 million megapixels.
No, yeah.
Right?
No way. You can't do that.
So
no.
I mean, what exactly is getting encoded onto the Satoshi? Like, what's...
Right.
How
So that's...
of something can you put on here?
Yeah, there's a limitation as to the number of bits that you can fit in the data field. I'm not exactly sure. I may have known the answer a decade ago, but I hadn't really dealt with it.
What I'm trying to figure out here is because someone wrote a question about this, or comment about this too. He says the cryptocurrency protocols will be built in layers. So I'm trying to figure out, is this a layer or is this part of that, like an integral part of the blockchain itself?
Yeah, this is the ordinals. Sorry, the
inscriptions.
Ordinal associated with the Satoshi is actually on the blockchain.
Okay.
The question is there complementary data? There obviously, right? So the NFT itself is not going to be stored. The image is not going to be stored in the blockchain. Even with Ethereum, that's the case. If there's an image or a short clip, you're not going to be storing that particular video on the chain, but instead what you're going to do is you're going to, like, for example, I know Odyssey, which is a NFT marketplace, uses the IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, to store files optionally. Some people store the files themselves on their own server, which is of course problematic long term, because what if you lose that file? But at the very least, what makes the NFT complete is a hash of that data, right? And that'll always fit into on the blockchain.
So is it like there's something on the blockchain that's it sounds to me like a hyperlink to some other library that has the actual thing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That is the one thing. So you can have IPFS or your own system. So yeah, that is the one. The other thing is the identifying hash that was generated out of the original file, right? You can take any data stream and run it through a SHA-256 algorithm, for example, and generate a whatever 100-bit or some number of characters and numbers string. And anytime you take that data and run it through that function again, it'll spit out the same string. But if you change one tiny bit in the data, then a completely new string will be generated as hash. So that'll be another way to always identify that particular NFT token with that file. Even if you have no linkage at all, if you have no hyperlink at all, this would at least be one way to always establish that kind of linkage between the file and the NFT. And then there are also NFTs. I don't know if we've ever discussed NFTs much on here, but there are also NFTs that are completely self-contained. They don't refer to anything. They just contain bits and pieces of data, and there's certain conventions on how the data is interpreted, and based on that convention, it generates a piece of art, like a big pixelated piece of art or some stupid kind of... It's self-contained. It wouldn't have to link anywhere. Those are like the kinds of crypto NFT tokens that don't require linking anywhere.
Well, bringing this back to Bitcoin maximalism, right? Because that's what we're talking about here, which is Bitcoin the king and everything else either at best kind of minor in comparison or at worst just ridiculous. Right.
Yeah. So
I agree with you. I think the everything else is ridiculous is probably a little bit too strong, but if based on what we're hearing and the commitment from the Bitcoin team and the fact that none of it was pre-mined, I feel like it doesn't just have the momentum for being the first one. It's sticking to the principles that none of the other ones are.
Right. I mean, it's remaining unique, interesting. While everyone else wants to be the new best thing, Bitcoin is actually the only one that has the capacity to be truly decentralized, truly zero pre-mined. Because now there's so much innovation, so much competition. If you want to have a new crypto, you need to have a whole team. You need to be able to pay for the team, so you need to have money, so you need to have some pre-mine. That's the eternal advantage that Bitcoin will always have, is that it was truly created by disinterested individuals who were just unbiased and uncorruptible individuals, and now it's grown to this thing. It's like, irreversible, unstoppable, and unique. Actually, let me try to close this laptop screen for a second.
Uh-oh.
And I'll reopen it.
Uh-oh.
Just because I would like to have access to my mouse arrow again.
Okay, here we go. Here goes Nima. He is black, and he's back. What in tarnation is going on back there? Another important thing about the crypto, he can't hear me right now, so he can deal with this, is me and him have had this running disagreement of whether or not Bitcoin is actually a currency right now. And he says it is. I feel like it's a prototype of a currency. Not because it doesn't fit the definition of what we've talked about, which is the creators demanding their own token in exchange for services. But the fact that those services aren't universally needed by the society. So, I mean, we've got this service which says, okay, it creates this immutable stamp in time where it can't be destroyed, it can't be altered, and everybody can go back and see this time that this thing occurred, and now we could see, hey, we could actually put information on that. So, for example, if we want to create a contract, I don't know, buying and selling a business or something, we could stick it on a blockchain where there's no confusion of where did it go. It could always be gone back to and referred to, and you don't have to worry about it being altered. That is a service. However, that's not the same category as you need it to pay your taxes, right? You need it to pay your taxes is a societal, like, encompassing everything. And even if, like, at the end of the year, I don't actually owe any taxes. Yeah, but you're paying sale taxes at the store. Every service that you interact with that involves money has to pay payroll taxes for their employees for working on top of it, whether or not they have any sales taxes. So taxes are everywhere and permeating everything. And I think if we wanted to create a private currency that didn't involve the initiation of the use of force by government, what the hell is Nima doing anyway? That don't involve the initiation of the use of force by government to give it value. I think that the service that needs to be provided are things that are typically provided by governments today. What do I mean by that? Stuff like justice, right? If you want to get access to a court system, how do we utilize a crypto? Oh, here comes Nima. How do we utilize a cryptocurrency in order to facilitate that transaction? Things like insurance premiums. Nima, I'm on my own goddamn rant. And you're just gonna have to wait. Things like insurance premiums, right? If we're able to create an insurance company that either uses Bitcoin or has its own token, and we say, hey, in order to utilize our insurance services, you have to pay us in the token that we create. Or, I don't know, creating HOA dues or figuring out how to have a community pay for road services. That's the big thing for what about the roads? How are we going to pay for the roads if we don't have government, right? Or title, right? I mean, this is a thing that people have talked about a lot as the utility of blockchain is you can create much cleaner title chains for real estate or cars or freaking whatever else, right? I believe, my opinion is once a crypto, whether it's Bitcoin or something else, starts incorporating these services and says, okay, in order to get the services from us, I see he's shaking his head at me. In order to get the services from us, you have to use our token. Then I think it achieves currency status. Nima, disagree with me.
Well, that's not up to the currency to do those. That would be what you're proposing would be to introduce human involvement and management into the core of a cryptocurrency, which is entirely a step back from the advances of crypto. Crypto is precisely about the fact that you don't have to trust an individual. You don't have to rely on people's honesty and their motives, worst of all. What you're suggesting would be business models that can run alongside cryptocurrency, but the cryptocurrency itself could never rely on such a thing, because it's exactly what crypto is about. It's not about so what if those people change their mind, for example? You know, this insurance company that you envision there that accepts money in this token. What if they suddenly say, "Oh no, we're not into the token anymore. We're going to accept a new token now"?
No, I'm saying the token that they create, and then yes, I don't know what would happen, Nima. This is an entirely new landscape that's about 10 years old that nobody knows what the hell's going on so far. I mean, we got 10 years to look back and compare it like we're doing now. But in terms of looking into the future and say, okay, how is society going to get reorganized based on this stuff? I have no fucking idea.
But like what you're suggesting, for example, the idea of insurance that can work with crypto, with smart contracts without human intervention, potentially. It's just somebody has to develop the smart contract, and then somebody has to audit it, and all that stuff we found out with the Ethereum fiasco. Ethereum had to fork the blockchain and actually roll back a few blocks.
Tell me to unlock your iPhone first.
Okay, we're being creeped on by Siri somehow. But what was I talking about? Ethereum had to fork, and so
you're saying
because of smart contract,
yeah,
because of the
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Shut up.
Could you please say that again?
Swear to God, this is my last iPhone ever.
Apple user.
So the problem with smart contracts that cleaned out the DAO, I think it was 2014 or whatever, the Ethereum smart contract, of all smart contracts, the DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization, was drained to the tune of $7 million or so because somebody hadn't tested it well. There was a bug in it, and the whole thing got drained of all the funds that people had put into it. So that was a sort of an awakening for people to realize, okay, we can't just put a smart contract out there. We have to audit and test the hell out of this thing before we actually deploy it, which is obviously, it seems so obvious and whatnot, but it was, a lot of people felt like, oh my God, the smart contracts are never going to work because of it, which I never really subscribed to. But yeah, so you can have insurance smart contracts out there that people pay into, and then if something happens, right, year so-and-so comes around, like you could have Social Security run on an Ethereum smart contract, for example. People pay in so and so much, and then one day they get a payout of
what are they getting paid, and what are they paying into it? Are they paying Ethereum or are they paying dollars?
Ethereum.
Okay.
Or whichever other.
It's 7:08 p.m.
Whichever other token you can do other tokens, right? You can build tokens on top of the Ethereum blockchain. So by the way, the reason why my screen looks different now is because I'm upgrading I restarted my other computer and I'm trying to upgrade it, and it's not really
You're in the other room now?
No, I'm still in the same room.
Oh, wow, totally different lighting.
But somehow it seems to have a problem with the mouse. Somehow, maybe it just seems to turn it off.
While we're arguing, Randall Stevens here is giving us some more comments.
Yeah.
First one, he says, MMT might be the way our current... Oh, wait, he said all sorts of shit. Randall, goddamn, man. You're as chatty as me. So the fundamental use case of Bitcoin is separation of money and state. Everything else is ancillary. It is the first largely adopted monetary system that is free from manipulation by the state. I don't know if it's free from manipulation by the state, but yeah, I mean, this goes back to what me and Nebo were arguing about, is what exactly does that look like?
I think I agree with him. Yeah, I agree with his statement.
He goes on, he says, MMT might be the way our current monetary system works, but it gives the government too much power, and they use that power to manipulate our economy and us. I would say that you don't fully understand the MMT premise.
Well, I mean, it doesn't give the government power. The government has those powers.
And MMT describes it.
MMT just observes and describes it. Correct.
And I will say this, Randall. Randall, I don't know how much you've listened to our previous stuff, but there's a misunderstanding of MMT, probably from the name modern money theory, right? Is that this describes the way modern systems work, but it doesn't describe the way previous systems work. And we argue that no, MMT actually describes money all the way back to the beginning. Like, I mean, go back to ancient Sumeria. It still describes what's going on, because it's all about what's taxed and what's issued as a currency, and then that creates a public sector and a private sector, and everything else after that's just kind of details, right? And MMT doesn't say, okay, this is the way that we should set something up. MMT, like Nima just said, this is just observing the situation, and also saying, hey, if you do X, you're going to get Y. Or if you do A, you're going to get B, but we're not telling you what to do here.
Right. I mean, there is some prescription that comes out of those observations, obviously. Correct. But yeah, it doesn't give those powers, but it just recognizes that they have these abilities and these powers. Now, I understand the argument. People say, oh, but if people know that, then they'll just start spending like crazy and all of that. Okay, so then I guess that we're telling ourselves some illusion, hoping that that'll keep the state at bay and see how that works out. Well, it won't work out, because the people who know this stuff, they will always take advantage of it, right? So I think it's better when everyone knows about it.
Well, and then like we talked about in our debt ceiling show, is understanding MMT. It doesn't eliminate all the reasons that the left and the right fight, but it eliminates a lot of them. Like,
yes.
There's so many, particularly economic reasons, that the left and right fight about that aren't real. These are non-real issues that whatever powers that be are able to get us riled up and fight over about when we don't need to. It's just fucking fake. So that's another reason. And by the way, who's Eric Voorhees? You know who that is? Randall's saying that.
Yeah, Eric Voorhees is he was the founder of Satoshi Dice. He's a crypto entrepreneur. He's a serial crypto entrepreneur. So he's been involved. I've met him actually a few times at several conferences, and he's been around for quite a while. So he's a crypto OG, if you will. You could say.
Randall, send him an email saying you want him to come on, or have us on, or whatever. I don't know if he does his own show.
Yeah.
And because if you're asking for it and then we invite him, it's he has people who watch him wanting him to go on the show, and then we ask him, and then it's more likely to happen, is what I'm saying.
Right.
As opposed to, hey, I'm someone you don't know, come on my show.
Right. Maybe he still remembers me, but probably not. But he started Shapeshift.io later on.
Oh, that was him. He was Shapeshift? Okay.
He was Shapeshift.
Is that still working?
Well, I think it's still around, but they've pivoted their mission quite a bit, so not sure what at one point they had this shifty, they call it the shifty button, which is like a little widget that that converts one crypto coin into another coin on the fly, right? So if you're accepting cryptocurrency if you're accepting Bitcoin for anything on your website, you could just put this Shifty button in front of it, and people can pay in like 100 other cryptocurrencies.
And you still get the Bitcoin.
And Shapeshift automatically converts that currency into Bitcoin. So what you get is Bitcoin. What your users pay is whatever they want to pay. You don't care. You get Bitcoin in the end. It was brilliant, but I guess it was regulatory issues and whatever that forced them to rescind that particular widget, that particular product offering at the end of the day.
Is there some... What's that?
Yeah, we'll try to get Eric on.
Yeah, I think
we'll
it's
work
a
on
great idea.
So yeah, my multimedia laptop with my high quality camera apparently doesn't have such a high quality mouse pad because it's completely stopped working. I turn it off and on and it just refuses to react to my mouse click. So I'll just keep using this one for now. But I do want to connect my microphone at least, so we get the crisp,
the
high
Blue
quality
Yeti
audio.
sound.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do that right now.
I'm not using a Blue Yeti, by the way. I have found out if you ever want to start your own podcast, do not get a condenser mic. Fuck no. They pick up everything. Like if you take your finger and go boop on the table, it'll pick that shit up. Breathing, squeak of the chair, somebody walks by the hallway. I don't even remember what kind this is, but don't get the condenser mic. Nima, do you have anything insgesamt to summarize? Okay, Bitcoin maximalism. Do you agree with, if not the hard version, but at least the soft version of the Bitcoin maximalist proposition?
Absolutely. Should we get into Vitalik's article maybe?
I got to go soon. How much do you want to dig into that article?
Well, I wanted to make the whole show about the damn article.
Oh, fuck me! Well, we're an hour into it, Nima. Do you want to do a whole another hour show going into the article?
Well, I hope it can be faster.
Do me a favor. If somebody listening would approve of this, I need to fucking print and scan some shit. Soon.
By the way, Rendell Stevens says Shapeshift is now a DAO. Yes, I remember now. That's what Eric was talking about. He was going to turn that into a DAO. That's so smart.
Okay, then I guess we have to have him on.
And also, yes, another hour according to our viewership. 100% of our viewers are saying yes, another hour.
I've got shit to do, Randall. Keep talking, Nima.
Okay.
Let me look at these emails that have been rolling in since this show started.
I'll just start reading from this article.
Here, I'll hit the button. There you go.
So this is Vitalik in defense of maximalism. Of course, this is written by Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum. In defense of Bitcoin maximalism from April 1st, 2022. We've been hearing for years that the future is blockchain, not Bitcoin. The future of the world won't be one major cryptocurrency or even a few, but many cryptocurrencies. And the winning ones will have strong leadership under one central roof to adapt rapidly to users' needs for scale. Bitcoin is a boomer coin, and Ethereum is soon to follow. It will be newer and more energetic assets that attract the new waves of mass users who don't care about a weird libertarian ideology or self-sovereign verification, are turned off by toxicity and anti-government mentality, and just want blockchain, DeFi, and games that are fast and work. Because that's what this was all about. This was Satoshi's vision, is for people to drop their anti-government mentality and deliver games that are fast and work. But what if this narrative is all wrong and the ideas, the habits, and practices of Bitcoin maximalism are in fact pretty close to correct? What if Bitcoin is far more than an outdated pet rock tied to a network effect? What if Bitcoin maximalists actually deeply understand that they're operating in a very hostile and uncertain world where there are things that need to be fought for, and their actions, personalities, and opinions on protocol design deeply reflect that fact? What if we live in a world of honest cryptocurrencies, of which there are very few, and grifter cryptocurrencies, of which there are very many?
Like I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a healthy dose of intolerance is in fact necessary to prevent the former from sliding into the latter. That is the argument that this post will make. We live in a dangerous world, and protecting freedom is serious business. Hopefully this is much more obvious now than it was 6 weeks ago, when many people still seriously thought that Vladimir Putin is a misunderstood and kindly character who is merely trying to protect Russia and save Western civilization from the gay apocalypse. But it's still worth repeating. We live in a dangerous world where there are plenty of bad faith actors who do not listen to compassion and reason. By the way, oh wow, thanks Randall. Love you guys. We love you back. Dylan, if you see any messages coming in, let me know. A blockchain is at its core a security technology, a technology that is fundamentally all about protecting people and helping them survive in such an unfriendly world. It is like the file of Galadriel, a light to you in dark places when all other lights go out. It is not a low-cost light or a fluorescent hippie energy-efficient light or a high-performance light. It is a light that sacrifices on all of those dimensions to optimize for one thing and one thing only, to be a light that does when it needs to do, when you're facing the toughest challenge of your life and there's a friggin' 20-foot spider staring you in the face. So that's from Frodo Baggins with a spider and holding the light there.
Shelob is the name of the spider. I just reread The Hobbit, by the way.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with this.
Blockchains are being used every day by unbanked and underbanked people, by activists, by sex workers, by refugee, and by many other groups, either who are uninteresting for profit-seeking centralized financial institutions to serve, or who have enemies that don't want them to be served. They are used as a primary lifeline by many people to make their payments and store their savings. Just a quick note. We recently read a lot from Peter Zeihan's The End of the World's Just the Beginning, and Peter Zeihan was on Joe Rogan recently, and he has a very, underwhelming analysis of
2011 level criticism of Bitcoin, yeah.
A pre-boomer level understanding of cryptocurrency, which he says, well, they don't really do anything. That's the extent of his analysis. They don't really work very well. He doesn't go into what hasn't worked well for him when he tried. They don't really do anything. He doesn't say what they do and don't do.
Or he doesn't address the claims of what people say they do.
Right. Yes. So people like him who never face censorship, who never face repercussions, who never face persecution, who never face any of these hardships that barrel down on the population, that come down on us from a centralized authority of power, those people will never truly understand the value proposition of cryptocurrency. So that's what Vitalik is talking about here. Continuing. And to that end, public blockchains sacrifice a lot for security. Blockchains require each transaction to be independently verified thousands of times to be accepted. Unlike centralized systems that confirm transactions in a few hundred milliseconds, blockchains require users to wait anywhere from 10 seconds to 10 minutes to get a confirmation. Blockchains require users, by the way, this is not fully true, right? Because a credit card transaction technically doesn't settle until 90 days after the transaction. So, but practically, I understand what he's saying. Yeah, blockchains require users to be fully in charge for authenticating themselves. If you lose your key, you lose your coins. Blockchains sacrifice privacy, requiring even crazier and more expensive technology to get their privacy back. What are all of these sacrifices for? To create a system that can survive in an unfriendly world and actually do the job of being a light in dark places when all other lights go out. Excellent at that task requires two key ingredients. I think he meant excellence at that task requires two key ingredients. A robust and defensible technology stack and a robust and defensible culture. The key property to have in a robust and defensible technology stack is focus on simplicity and deep mathematical purity. We just talked about this. A 1 megabyte block size, which is now 2 megabytes, but whatever, still much less than they wanted to push it to. A 21 million coin limit, and a simple Nakamoto consensus proof of work mechanism that even a high school student can understand. The protocol design must be easy to justify decades and centuries down the line. The technology and parameter choices must be a work of art. The second ingredient is the culture of uncompromising, steadfast minimalism. This must be a culture that can stand unyieldingly in defending itself against corporate and government actors, trying to co-opt the ecosystem from outside, as well as bad actors inside the crypto space, trying to exploit it for personal profit, of which there are many. Yeah, like Craig Roberts, the dude who claims to be Satoshi, BitTorrent Tron acquisition. By the way, so like if you are one of these people who sneers and looks down on conspiracy theorists, your crypto project is automatically useless. You're unqualified to do any work in this space because you don't even understand why crypto was created in the first place. Now do what Bitcoin and Ethereum culture, now what do Bitcoin and Ethereum culture actually look like? Well, let's ask Kevin Pham. I like this. Kevin Pham. I don't think the Bitcoin and Ethereum community can be any more different, right? You have... I think Tony Weiss is his name. He's a Bitcoin trader. He's got like this Bitcoin bandana, an axe, and a machete, and he's standing in the woods, ready to defend that crypto mentality.
And then to the right, his machete in the fire, by the way.
Oh yeah, his machete has been hardened by the fire. And to the right, we have a Austin Powers looking unicorn. Sporting rainbow background, whatever, dude.
Keep talking.
With Ethereum shirt on. I mean, basically, imagine your average San Francisco pedestrian, trying to look serious. So that would probably be the right picture summarized. And also, here, don't believe this is representative. Well, let's ask Kevin Pham again. And he has this guy with a "Make Bitcoin Great Again" hat. Firing what looks to be an M16 or AR-15 type rifle. And then to the right, we have Vitalik Buterin, who, he's posting this himself. He's a cool dude. He makes fun of himself. But he does look a little less frightening than the Make Bitcoin Great Again. Pretty scrawny. He looks a little scrawny. Yeah, he's a scrawny dude. He has a weak handshake. I've met him a few times too. But he's a cool dude. Smart, very smart guy for sure. Now you might say, this is just Ethereum people having fun. And at the end of the day, they understand what they have to do and what they're dealing with. But do they? Let's look at the kinds of people that Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, hangs out with. Okay, we have here the Binance dude, CZ in Beijing. We have here Vitalik with Vladimir Putin in Russia. We have Vitalik meeting near Bakrat, the mayor of Jerusalem, right? What's the point? What's the significance of the mayor of Jerusalem to cryptocurrency? Well, none, I guess. Vitalik shakes hand with the Argentinian former president Mauricio Macri, right? So he's like meeting Latin American dictators. Vitalik gives a friendly hello to Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google and advisor of the US Department of Defense, right? This asshole right here. And Vitalik has his first of many meetings with Audrey Tang, digital minister of Taiwan. Anyway. And this is only a small selection. The immediate question that anyone looking at this should ask is, what the hell is the point of publicly meeting all these people? Some of these people are very decent entrepreneurs and politicians. Others are actively involved in serious human rights abuses that Vitalik certainly does not support. Does Vitalik not realize just how much some of these people are geopolitically at each other's throats?
Because we all know if you stand next to somebody for a picture, you agree with everything that they do and say.
All right. Now the thing is, so Crypto Vitalik is standing next to these people instead of working on the code of Ethereum, instead of adding more efficiency. So the question that you should ask yourself is, why is this a priority for him? That's I think his own point. That's where he calls himself out for, basically. It's like, dude, what am I doing? Now, maybe he is just an idealistic person who believes in talking to people to help bring about world peace, and a follower of Frederick Douglass's dictum to unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong. But there's also a simpler hypothesis. Vitalik is a hippie, happy, globe-trotting pleasure and status seeker, and he deeply enjoys meeting and feeling respected by people who are important. And it's not just Vitalik. Companies like Consensus are totally happy to partner with Saudi Arabia, and the ecosystem as a whole keeps trying to look to mainstream figures for validation. Now ask yourself the question, when the time comes, actually important things are happening on the blockchain, actually important things that offend people who are powerful, which ecosystem would be more willing to put its foot down and refuse to censor them no matter how much pressure is applied on them to do so? The ecosystem with globe-trotting nomads who really, really care about being everyone's friend, or the ecosystem with people who take pictures of themselves with an AR-15 and an axe as a side hobby? Currency is not just the first app. It is by far the most successful one. Many people of the blockchain, not Bitcoin persuasion argue that cryptocurrency is the first application of blockchains, but it is a very boring one, and the true potential of blockchains lies in bigger and more exciting things. Let's go through the list of applications in the Ethereum white paper. Again, this is the Ethereum founder writing this stuff, okay?
Right.
Issuing tokens, financial services, stablecoins, identity and reputation systems, decentralized file storage, decentralized autonomous organizations, peer-to-peer gambling, prediction markets. Many of these categories have applications that have launched and that have at least some users. That said, cryptocurrency people really value empowering underbanked people in the global south. Which of these applications actually have lots of users in the global south? As it turns out, by far the most successful one is storing wealth and payments. 3% of Argentinians own cryptocurrency, as do 6% of Nigerians, and 12% of people in Ukraine. By far the biggest instance of a government using blockchains to accomplish something useful today is cryptocurrency donations to the government of Ukraine, which have raised more than 100 million if you include donations to the non-government Ukraine-related efforts.
How up to date is that?
Well, this was April 2022, so shortly after the war with Russia.
Okay, so
started.
That's probably even way higher now.
For sure. What other application has anywhere close to that level of actual, real adoption today? Perhaps the closest is ENS. It's a domains thing, I guess. This is what Namecoin was doing very early on already. Decentralized naming for wallets, websites, and more. So yeah, it's good stuff. And it's pretty easy to do because you don't have to store a lot of data for data mapping. So yeah, I think domain mapping. So if domain mapping isn't decentralized yet, then forget about DeFi, forget about identity, this and that. So this is one of the easiest things to do, in my opinion. And it's not been universally applied yet. So yeah, where are we on this? Crypto geniuses out there, where are we on decentralized domain mapping? Anyway, DAOs are real and growing, but today far too many of them are appealing to wealthy, rich country people whose main interest is having fun and using cartoon character profiles to satisfy their first world need for self-expression.
and not build schools and hospitals and solve other real-world problems. Thus, we can see the two sides pretty clearly. Team Blockchain, privileged people in wealthy countries who love to virtue signal about moving beyond money and capitalism and can't help being excited about decentralized governance experimentation as a hobby, and Team Bitcoin, a highly diverse group of both rich and poor people in many countries around the world, including the global south, who are actually using the capitalist tool of free self-sovereign money to provide real value to human beings today. Focusing exclusively on being money makes for better money. A common misconception about why Bitcoin does not support richly stateful smart contracts goes as follows. Bitcoin really values being simple, and particularly having low technical complexity to reduce the chance of that something will go wrong. As a result, it doesn't want to add the more complicated features and opcodes that are necessary to be able to support more complicated smart contracts in Ethereum. This misconception is, of course, wrong. In fact, there are plenty of ways to add rich statefulness in Bitcoin. Search for the word covenants in Bitcoin chat archives to see many proposals being discussed. And many of these proposals are surprisingly simple. The reason why covenants have not been added is not that Bitcoin developers see the value in rich statefulness, but find even a little bit more protocol complexity intolerable. Rather, it's because Bitcoin developers are worried about the risks of the systemic complexity that rich statefulness being possible would introduce into the ecosystem. Ethereum's battle with minor extractable value is an excellent example of this problem appearing in practice. It's very easy in Ethereum. By the way, Dylan, let me know if there's any chats coming in. Any chats coming in, let me know.
I will.
Ethereum's battle with minor extractable value is an excellent example of this problem appearing in practice. It's very easy in Ethereum to build applications where the next person to interact with some contract gets a substantial reward, causing transactors and miners to fight over it and contributing greatly to network centralization and risk requiring complicated workarounds. In Bitcoin, building such a systemically risky application is hard, in large part because Bitcoin lacks rich statefulness and focuses on simple and minor extracted value free use case, focuses on the simple use case of just being money. Systemic contagion can happen in non-technical ways too. Bitcoin just being money means that Bitcoin requires relatively few developers, helping to reduce the risk that developers will start demanding to print themselves free money.
Which was the issue that I brought up early on. Yes.
He actually points to a proposal where somebody suggested something like that. A proposal to fund Ether 18 months of so and so much. So basically somebody was pay himself Ether and add that to the core code of the application. Okay?
Right. So part of the generation of Ether is to create it for me.
Exactly. Part of the entire functionality of Ether is to send me some money every week. So right. Yeah, let's go there. Bitcoin just being money reduces pressure for core developers to keep adding features to keep up with the competition and serve developers' needs. In so many ways, systemic effects are real, and it's just not possible for a currency to enable an ecosystem of highly complex and risky decentralized applications without that complexity biting it back somehow. Bitcoin makes the safe choice. If Ethereum continues its layer 2-centric approach, ETH, the currency, may gain some distance from the application ecosystem that it's enabling and thereby get some protection. So-called high-performance layer 1 platforms, on the other end, stand no chance. So basically, it's making the case that any base layer should be simple, and then any bells and whistles that get more complex, it should be layers on top of that layer, which, by the way, we just discussed. Bitcoin Ordinals uses the Bitcoin blockchain to store data, and then uses maybe some top of that, some extra client to interpret the data, and maybe even its own blockchain. That's what Counterparty does, by the way, right? Counterparty has its own extra blockchain running on top of Bitcoin. Counterparty has been around for a long time, by the way. So just pulling it up real quick, just for people to just at least see it. Counterparty extends Bitcoin in new and powerful ways. It's been around for a while, for a long time, probably for Maybe even for longer than Ethereum. I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely been around for a while. Anyway, where was I? In general, the earliest projects in industry are the most genuine. Many industries and fields follow a similar pattern. First, some new exciting technology either gets invented or gets a big leap of improvement to the point where it's actually usable for something. At the beginning, the technology is still clunky. It is too risky for almost anyone to touch as an investment, and there's no social proof that people can use it to become successful. As a result, the first people involved are going to be the idealists, tech geeks, and others who are genuinely excited about the technology and its potential to improve society. Once the technology proves itself enough, however, the normies come in. Dun, dun, dun. The fucking normies, man. An event that in internet culture is often called Eternal September. And these are not just regular kindly normies who want to feel part of something exciting, but business normies wearing suits who start scouring the ecosystem wolf-eyed for ways to make money, with armies of venture capitalists just as eager to make their own money supporting them from the sidelines. In the extreme cases, outright grifters come in, creating blockchains with no redeeming social or technical value, which are basically borderline scams.
Like I mentioned.
But the reality is that, the line from altruistic idealist and grifter is really a spectrum. And the longer an ecosystem keeps going, the harder it is for any new project on the altruistic side of the spectrum to get going. So this was very palpable in the early days of Bitcoin, where the first Bitcoin conference I went to, I think, was 2014 in Austin, Texas. It was full of idealists and libertarians, activists. Maybe one venture capital guy was there who was himself all over, all into the political implications, the freedom, the decentralization, the non-government, etc. And then, it didn't even take 2 years, and all these conferences were suddenly basically VC and banking jerk-off sessions. I stopped going to these conferences because it just got so boring and stupid. But just agreeing exactly, that's what happened. On the noisy proxy, one noisy proxy for the blockchain industry's slow replacement of philosophical and idealistic values with short-term profit-seeking values is the larger and larger size of pre-mines, the allocations that developers of a cryptocurrency give to themselves. So you see here what we talked about earlier? You see this? Mm-hmm. So 2010, right? 2010, Bitcoin, 0% pre-mine. The only one of all of these, right? And it's way over to the left here, 0%.
Right.
Then we have Ethereum.
Which is almost 20, which is, huge. But that's nothing compared to these other ones.
Similar, exactly. EOS, Tezos, Cosmos, Tron.
Some of these are, I think anything above 50 is it. What?
Yeah, Internet Computer was like 75% pre-mine. Binance Smart, so Solana is up here in the 60% pre-mine. So that's how you can spot potential garbage. Not saying they are necessary garbage. I'm just saying potential garbage. Which blockchain communities deeply value self-sovereignty, privacy, and decentralization, and are making to get big sacrifices which blockchain communities deeply value self-sovereignty, privacy, and decentralization, and are making to get big sacrifices to get it, and which blockchain communities are just trying to pump up their market caps and make money for founders and investors. The above chart should make it pretty clear. Yeah. Intolerance is good. This is his Gordon Gekko moment, I guess. Gordon Gekko, greed is good. Intolerance is good. The above market is clear. The above makes it clear why Bitcoin's status as the first cryptocurrency gives it unique advantages that are extremely difficult for any cryptocurrency created within the last 5 years to replicate. But now we get to the biggest objection against Bitcoin maximalist culture. Why is it so toxic? The case for Bitcoin toxicity stems from from Conquest's second law. In Robert Conquest's original formulation, the law says that any organization not explicitly and constitutionally right-wing will sooner or later become left-wing. That's so important. But really, this is just a special case of a much more general pattern, and one that the modern age of relentlessly homogenizing and conformist social media is more relevant than ever. If you want to retain an identity that is different from the mainstream, then you need a really strong culture that actively resists and fights assimilation into the mainstream every time it tries to assert its hegemony. Yeah, I mean, this is probably something to talk about briefly. I think that's why we have things such as rituals and memorials and holidays to remember. Originally, the idea is you don't get to have a good system just because you wrote it down on a piece of paper somewhere. Maintaining a good system requires active participation of lots and lots of people to remind everyone regularly what it is that we're doing here. And at some point, the purpose of what we're doing here gets lost on people. And that's when corruption slides in. That's when systems become corruptible, is when the people begin forgetting what it is that we did, what we're trying to do here from the beginning, what it is that we're trying to guard against from the beginning, right? Moving on.
Yeah, then
blockchains.
I don't mean to hit your flow. I am bumping up against time. I gotta run.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just read this last paragraph.
Yeah,
then.
Go for it.
So, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is not much fundamentally new stuff that he adds here. In the very end, he just says, it's better to be a maximalist. Maximalism is often derided in the media as both a dangerous, toxic right-wing cult and a paper tiger that will disappear as soon as some other cryptocurrency comes in and takes over Bitcoin's supreme network effect. But the reality is that none of the arguments for maximalism that I describe above depend at all on network effects. Network effects really are logarithmic, non-quadratic. Once a cryptocurrency is big enough, it has enough liquidity to function, and multi-cryptocurrency payment processors will easily add it to their collection. But the claim that Bitcoin is an outdated pet rock and its value derives entirely from a walking zombie network effect that just needs a little push to collapse is similarly completely wrong. Crypto assets like Bitcoin have real cultural and structural advantages that make them powerful assets worth holding and using. Bitcoin is an excellent example of the category, though it's certainly not the only one. Other honorable cryptocurrencies do exist, and maximalists have been willing to support and use them. Maximalism is not just Bitcoin for the sake of Bitcoin. Rather, it's a very genuine realization that most other crypto assets are scams, and a culture of intolerance is unavoidable and necessary to protect newbies and make sure at least one corner of that space continues to be a corner worth living in. It's better to mislead 10 newbies into avoiding an investment that turns out good than it is to allow a single newbie to get bankrupted by a grifter. It's better to make your protocol too simple and fail to serve 10 low-value, short attention span gambling applications than it is to make it too complex and fail to serve the central sound money use case that underpins everything else. And it's better to offend millions by standing aggressively for what you believe in than it is to try to keep everyone happy and end up standing for nothing. Be brave, fight for your values, be a maximalist.
Well said. I mean, it's hard to put that in summary, especially after, I mean, we just went over it, but I mean, he hits the details so clearly. And I mean, I know I was walking in and out, but I have read the article before, so I know what it's referring to. Yeah. Is that, I mean, he just hits it over and over again. Like, the purpose of this is to be a currency. There's no bells and whistles. And here's why that's important. And I mean, it's just example after example after example of why that's important and what it's for. And I mean, it's particularly enlightening for the person to write that is someone who founded another cryptocurrency, and he criticizes his own cryptocurrency in contrast to Bitcoin. I mean,
yeah, and the community surrounding that crypto coin.
Right.
He basically he really makes it apparent how important the community is. It's not just an adjunct to your technology. It is part and parcel of the whole thing.
Right. And then to your point, like, you know, okay, you wrote something down on a piece of paper, great, but what are the actual people doing? And
exactly.
the fact that you have these rituals where, okay, no, we're not going to change it. You know, on one hand, you can say, oh, yeah, well, you guys are just doing it the way that you were doing it before. That doesn't make any sense, right? Fallacy of tradition, basically. But at the same time, it's like, no, we're worried about you taking this and running off into the, you know, into the grifting sunset. We don't want to change this because we see what happens when you change it too fast.
Exactly.
Right? The purpose is this. We're not, like you said, you know, this we're not having a gambling website functionality to this because that is retarded. We're not going to introduce a lower level of security just so we can service some gambling websites.
Well, and it is being used by gambling websites, so it's not needed. You don't need to add bells and whistles for that, right? But what he was saying is, well, we're not going to add some specific use case that facilitates some gambling websites' convenient demands just because it's what they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do what we're doing, and then you figure out how to work with it.
Right.
Like that was Eric Voorhees, because we just talked about it. There was his website, Satoshi Dice. It was a gambling site, and the way it worked is you just send Bitcoins to a particular address. That's how you place your bets. And that's it. If you win, then you get money returned to your address. So no account. You didn't have to create an account. You have to log into anything. You just send Bitcoins to an address. You receive money.
Don't need your ID. You don't need to connect your bank account. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Nima, I think this has been excellent. I'm sorry I wasn't as animated for the second half of the reading, but I do have to run. Yeah. I got kids and shit. You need to make some kids.
Yeah. I know. I know.
And yeah, I want to keep talking about this, and I think this is, you know, again, every year like, oh, Bitcoin's finally dead. It's not happening yet, and I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon, as we've detailed here. So anyway, this has been Dylan Moore and Nima Majur of Irina TV. We've been here doing it live, and we appreciate you watching. We'll post it up later. And check us out at irina.tv.